to the WrestleHavoc Podcast on YouTube, where we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. We talk all that goes on in the realm of WWE and AEW every week. And now, here's your host, the one that will give you a reality check on pro wrestling, Flamin' Ricky Duraeus. This is the WrestleHavoc Podcast.
What's up, everybody? It is Flamin' Ricky Duraeus, right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, here to review Friday Night SmackDown from May 12th, 2023. We got a lot of things to talk about right here on the SmackDown Review. Of course, the World Heavyweight Championship tournament continues as we had two triple threat matches, one consisting of Edge, AJ Styles, and Rey Mysterio, and the second involving Austin Theory, Bobby Lashley, and Sheamus. Of course, the winners of those two triple threat matches will meet later on in the main event, and the winner of that match will go on to face Seth Rollins at Saudi Arabia in Night of Champions. But nonetheless, overall thoughts on this show. Honestly, I thought this was an okay show. I definitely thought the first hour was much better than the second hour. I felt like after the Roman segment, the show kind of fell off a cliff in my opinion, because then on the second hour of the show, we really had stuff that really didn't matter in my opinion. But nonetheless, I thought it was a fine show nonetheless. Of course, we have to talk about the Bloodline segment. Of course, the Bloodline is literally everybody's cup of tea when it comes to SmackDown almost every week. And this week was no different, man. This week was very, very, very interesting. The seeds are once again continuing to get planted when it comes to Jey Uso being executed out of the Bloodline. As far as I'm concerned, that is what it looks like it's going to happen, and it really escalated on this show. Of course, we had Roman basically saying that they are not going to go after the tag team championships. I'm going to go after the tag team championships with Solo because Solo can get shit done, unlike you guys. And I'm going to dedicate this victory to not you guys. I'm going to dedicate this victory to Alpha and Sika, the Wild Samoans. So we're going to be talking about that as well. Really, besides all that, nothing really important happened on the show, to be quite honest with you. Nothing really special. Really, the two triple threat matches and the Roman Reigns segment were really the only two important things that happened on this show. But before I get on with all this craziness regarding Friday Night SmackDown, make sure to like and subscribe to the WrestleHavoc Podcast right here on YouTube, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content, and as the frickin' referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. Also, the WrestleHavoc Podcast is also available on audio platforms. It is available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and Google Podcasts. So if you guys want to listen to the WrestleHavoc Podcast in audio format, it is available on all of those platforms. So let's get on straight to the SmackDown show. Of course, the show kicks off with the first of two triple threat matches, the first being Edge versus Rey Mysterio versus AJ Styles. Of course, this past Monday on Raw, we also had two triple threat matches in which we had Seth Rollins beating both Shinsuke Nakamura and Damian Priest, as well as Finn Balor defeating The Miz and Cody Rhodes, with Brock Lesnar causing Cody Rhodes the match, which then will most likely, which I believe it's already official, will lead to them having a match once again at the Night of Champions pay-per-view. And then, of course, we had Finn Balor and Seth Rollins in the finals this past Monday on Raw, which we had Seth Rollins beating Finn Balor, and he will advance to the finals of the World Title Tournament, which was pretty obvious, to say the least, in my opinion. I mean, if you really think about it, I mean, if you look at all the people that were on the Raw side of the tournament, you got Seth Rollins, Shinsuke Nakamura, and Damian Priest. Both Shinsuke and Damian Priest were not going to win whatsoever. And you had Finn Balor, Cody Rhodes, and The Miz. Why is The Miz in this tournament? I have absolutely no idea. But Finn Balor could have been a logical choice, but they didn't go with Finn Balor, nor did they go with Cody Rhodes. But Seth Rollins was definitely the right decision to make nonetheless. But in this pool, we have Edge, Rey Mysterio, and AJ Styles, as well as Bobby Lashley, Austin Theory, and Sheamus. But the first match that happened on the show was the Edge, Mysterio, and AJ match. Of course, this is the first round of the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament. Nonetheless, I thought this was a pretty good match overall, pretty decent match to kick off the show. Great seeing Edge wrestle on television. Same thing as Rey Mysterio. It's great to see AJ Styles back because we haven't seen him in a while. It's great to see AJ on SmackDown as well because of the fact that AJ, if you really think about it, if there is any wrestler that you can associate well with the brand, it's definitely AJ Styles in my opinion. And he fits so well on SmackDown, I didn't know what the hell he was doing on Raw, to be quite honest with you. Even before Triple H took over, he really wasn't doing anything. I mean, he was doing the whole Judgment Day feud thing, but I mean, I wasn't really too keen on that in my eyes. But let's get on with the match. AJ and Ray go after Edge. We get a back elbow by Ray, but then Ray follows up with a sunset flip. After that, Edge goes for a roll-up on AJ, but then he goes for a roll-up on Ray. Ray goes for the roll-up on Edge. And then we get a boot on AJ by Edge, but then Edge is on the apron. At this point, AJ has Ray down. Then Edge goes for the sunset flip, and then Edge drops down AJ on Rey Mysterio, but then Edge hits the Edge-O-Matic on Styles. After that, we get the cover into near fall, but then Edge sends AJ chest first into the corner. We then get a boot by Edge taking Ray to the outside, but then AJ goes for the phenomenal blitz. After that, we get a sliding forearm by AJ, but then Ray comes in. Then we get a backbreaker by AJ on Ray. And then he takes AJ, that being Edge. But AJ reverses and knocks Edge to the outside of the ring. After that, AJ sends Ray into the corner, but then we get the Hurricane Rana by Ray on AJ. After that, he goes for a Hurricane Rana on Edge. After that, we get a sunset flip counter by Ray into a kick. And then we get a springboard crossbody caught by Edge after that. And then Edge hits a fall-away slam on Ray. And then he sets up the spear, but then both AJ and Ray counter and hit a kick on Edge. Ray then ends up going for a Code Red. After that, we get a cover and a near fall. We then get a kick by AJ, but then he sends Ray to the outside, but then Edge holds onto Ray. And it looks like he's going to go for the DDT, but then what happens is AJ actually goes for the baseball slide, knocking both Edge and Ray down. Once we're back from commercial break, AJ is on the apron, and then he tries to pick up Ray, but then he lands on his feet. At this point, both men are on the apron, and then Edge spears both men to the outside. Now, keep in mind, this is when they immediately came back to commercial break. Literally, the first major thing that happened as soon as they came back to commercial break was Edge doing a fucking double spear on both AJ and Ray to the outside. Holy shit. After that, he takes Ray back into the ring. Edge goes for the cover, but we get a kick out. And then Edge stomps at Ray, but then AJ takes Edge to the outside. After that, Ray goes for a right hand. He then follows up with an enziguri, and then Ray gets caught by AJ, but then AJ manages to apply the calf crusher. But Edge comes in and applies the crossface on Rey Mysterio. But then AJ hits the headbutt on Edge. After that, Edge and AJ fight it out. Ray goes to the outside, but then both Edge and AJ exchange shots. Edge manages to go for a waistlog, but then off the top, Rey Mysterio hits a Hurricane Rana, basically sending both men to the middle rope. At this point, he's going to set up the 619, but then the 619 was countered by Edge and AJ by going for a double dropkick. At this point, all men are down. We get a kick by Ray. We then get a drop kick by Ray on AJ, but then Ray runs into a boot by Edge. AJ then gets sent face first to the turnbuckle by Edge. Edge then goes to the top, but then Ray comes in. Ray then fights off Edge, but then Ray goes for the headbutt. At this point, AJ comes in and hits the set-out powerbomb on Ray. After that, we get a cover into near fall. AJ then fights off Edge, who is still on the top, but then AJ goes to the second rope, but then AJ takes Edge for a superplex attempt. After that, Rey Mysterio comes in. He goes to the top, and then he hits the sunset flip on both Edge and AJ. We then get a cover by Ray on AJ and a near fall. Then we get a dropkick to the back of Edge, sending him to the middle rope, which then leads to AJ sweeping Ray when he runs the ropes, but then AJ is on the apron. Edge manages to duck the phenomenal forearm, but then Edge is on the middle rope. Ray then goes for a senton on AJ, but then he hits the 619, but then Edge holds on and applies the educator on Ray. AJ comes in, and then he applies it on AJ, but then what happens is AJ makes it to the bottom rope. Then what happens is Ray actually goes for the 619 on Edge. Ray goes to the top, but then he drops down on Edge, but then what happens is out of nowhere, AJ Styles hits the phenomenal forearm, and he goes for the cover, and AJ Styles gets the win and advances to the semifinals of the World Title Tournament in the first triple threat match of the night. Overall thoughts on this match, I thought this was a very, very, very good match. Even when they first announced this match, a lot of people were excited. Edge cut this whole promo, basically a promo that he should have cut if he was on television, but he wasn't on television. And he cut this promo talking about that he wants to regain the championship that he never lost. It would have made a great story if Edge honestly went to the semifinals, but it didn't happen. I'm totally fine with AJ winning this match regardless. The only problem that I have is it's not really a problem with the match. It's basically a problem with the fact that we got SmackDown talent competing for a Raw championship. That makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. If you have Triple H saying that the World Heavyweight Championship is Raw exclusive, you make it Raw exclusive. I don't know why you have SmackDown talent competing for a Raw championship. I thought the brand split was supposed to be taken seriously after the draft, but clearly WWE does not like to follow their own rules. But nonetheless, AJ gets the win, and obviously, when AJ won this first portion of the whole night, you already knew who was going to win anyway, because there's no way you're going to have Sheamus, Bobby Lashley, or Austin Theory go to the finals against Seth Rollins. It makes total sense that AJ Styles was going to get that win. After that, we got our second triple threat match immediately after. We got Sheamus versus Bobby Lashley versus Austin Theory, of course, in their portion of the first round of the SmackDown side of the World Title Tournament. Overall thoughts on this match, it was not a bad match. I actually really enjoyed it. Personally, I would have much rather had Sheamus get the win over Bobby Lashley. Nothing against Bobby Lashley. I just personally believe that Sheamus would have been much better in the finals position rather than Bobby Lashley, because I feel like Sheamus is more over than Bobby Lashley in my eyes. But nonetheless, this was a good match. Theory goes to the outside because he's a fucking heel and he's a dumbass. Sheamus and Lashley gang up on Theory on the outside, but then Sheamus sends Theory back into the ring. Lashley then spears Theory down, but then Lashley goes for the swinging neckbreaker. After that, we get a knee by Sheamus, but then Sheamus picks up Theory. We then get a rolling senton by Sheamus, but then Lashley goes for a clothesline on Theory, sending him to the outside. At this point, Sheamus and Lashley fight it out. Sheamus picks up Lashley, but then Lashley face plants Sheamus down to the mat. After that, Lashley works on Sheamus with repeated elbows in the corner. After that, Lashley continues to be in control over Sheamus, but then Sheamus hits the slam on Lashley. And we then get a cover engineer fall, but then we get a shot to the back of Lashley. At this point, Lashley is on the apron, but then Lashley takes Sheamus up. Sheamus fights back, but then Sheamus takes Lashley for the 10 beats of the bell ring, but then Theory comes in, and then he tries to get hit with the right, but then Sheamus follows up with the 10 beats on Theory. After that, once we're back from commercial break, Lashley runs through Theory. He picks up Theory, and then he drives Theory to the ring post. At this point, Lashley and Sheamus are in the ring, but then Sheamus and Lashley fight it out. Both men exchange shots. We then get a knee by Sheamus after that. Lashley then takes down Sheamus, but then Lashley runs into a double boot into the corner. Sheamus goes to the top, but then Sheamus drops down Lashley. He drops down, but then Lashley catches him and hits the belly-to-belly throw. That's what happens, basically. After that, Lashley applies the hurt lock, but then Theory goes for the drop kick. After that, Sheamus goes for the chop block, and then we get a cover by Theory into near fall. Lashley then sends Theory into the corner. And then Theory hits the boot, and then he goes for what the commentators called it a blockbuster, but to me, it kind of looked like a sling blade. I don't know why, but it just did. But then we get a cover into near fall after that. Theory goes after Sheamus. Theory then sends Lashley to the steel steps, but then Theory goes for a rolling shotgun dropkick attempt, countered by Sheamus into an Irish curse backbreaker. After that, Sheamus gets up. Theory gets up, but then he goes after Theory, and then what happens is he clotheslines, and we get a bunch of clotheslines in the corner by Sheamus. He picks up Theory, and then he goes to the top, but then Theory tries to fight back, basically, and Sheamus manages to hit the white noise off the second rope. We then get a cover by Sheamus into near fall, but then Sheamus picks up Theory, but then Theory rolls through. We then get a near fall, but then we get a knee by Sheamus. After that, Sheamus runs into a spear by Lashley, but then Theory sends Lashley to the ring post, and then we get a cover by Theory, and it looks like he's going to steal the win, but we get a near fall. After that, Theory picks up Lashley, but then Lashley escapes. Lashley then goes for the one-armed slam, but then he applies the hurt lock on Theory. Theory then tries to escape by going in each corner, but then what happens is Sheamus hits the bro kick on Theory, but then Lashley sends Sheamus to the outside, basically stealing the win, and we get a cover. And Bobby Lashley wins and advances to the semifinals, facing off against AJ Styles later on in the night. Overall thoughts on this portion of this triple threat match portion. This wasn't a bad match whatsoever. Quite frankly, what I don't like is, having a feud happen on one brand and then the draft happens and basically you draft the same people and they're going to continue feuding on the other brand. I just hate when they do that. Having Theory involved in this match was kind of iffy to me, in my opinion. Why do you have a guy like Theory, but you don't have a guy like Gunther? Makes kind of no sense. But honestly, I would have much rather had Sheamus win, to be quite honest with you. I think Sheamus and AJ would have been a much better match than Bobby Lashley versus AJ. Not to say that AJ versus Lashley was a bad match. I'm just saying, like, I would have much rather enjoyed Sheamus versus AJ Styles. Now, we all know if that match was going to happen, we all know the outcome would have been the same. AJ was going to win regardless, because at this point, ever since AJ won his triple threat match, you already knew that looking at this second triple threat match, you already knew who was going to win and go to the finals regardless. It was definitely going to be AJ Styles. Adam Pearce is backstage, and he meets up with one of the newest draft picks coming from NXT, Grayson Waller. He says next week it's going to be the Grayson Waller Effect, the debut show on SmackDown of the Grayson Waller Effect. I'm not really the biggest Grayson Waller guy. Now, granted, I haven't been watching NXT, but I've seen a little bit of Grayson Waller. He's a good wrestler, and you can say he's a good promo, but to me, I don't know why. I feel like a lot of the stuff that Grayson Waller does, and it's not his fault, just kind of feels a little too forced. I don't know why. That's just my opinion, but he's not bad. But I'm not really the biggest Grayson Waller guy. After that, we got Baron Corbin versus Mr. To the Moon, Cameron Grimes, in Cameron Grimes' first match. Basically, Baron Corbin challenged Grimes to a match last week, or I think it was vice versa. I completely forgot. And Corbin has the mic, and he says, "Look, everyone, it's Cameron Grimes, the last pick of the draft. It takes guts when you show up. In 2 minutes, he will be flat on his back, wishing he will go back to NXT. And then what happens is the match starts. Grimes then hits the cave-in, which is basically a double stomp. And we get a cover, and Cameron Grimes immediately just squashes Baron Corbin in less than like a minute. Overall thoughts on this. I like Cameron Grimes. I honestly wish they could have showcased a little bit more of his talents, and instead of just having a random squash match with fucking Baron Corbin of all people. But nonetheless, this wasn't bad at all, honestly. But again, I mean, I genuinely believe I would have much rather seen more with Cameron Grimes. That's like such a WWE thing to do. Like, you call up somebody from NXT and like they literally in their debut match, they barely wrestle a minute. It's ridiculous, but it is what it is. At this point, we're all used to it, so really you can't really complain a lot about it. But I see Cameron Grimes definitely being a success here on the main roster. I've always been a fan of Cameron Grimes. He is so fucking entertaining. If you guys haven't seen Cameron Grimes, bro, you guys are gonna laugh your asses off in a good way. This guy's really good. After that, we get the basically most important thing coming out of this whole show, and it's not really the World Heavyweight Championship tournament. It's this. Roman Reigns makes his first return to SmackDown ever since WrestleMania, and he makes his first appearance on WWE television in general since the Raw after WrestleMania. It's literally been how long? A month and a half? Jesus Christ, it's been a long-ass time. But this was a very, very, very good segment. I definitely enjoyed it, man. A lot of interesting developments coming off of this segment. Roman Reigns, of course, grabs the microphone. "Knoxville, Tennessee. Acknowledge me," says Roman. "You see, that is what greatness garners. It garners respect. But regardless of all the reactions, here's what needs to be respected. There is talk about all these royal families in the wrestling business, but let's be real. There is one. Every person in this ring main evented both nights of WrestleMania. There are only ones that will main event both nights of... They're basically the only ones that will main event both nights of WrestleMania. And the success just keeps pushing along onto Backlash. Even when we ain't here, we ain't there. Even when he isn't there, who stepped up this time?" And then he turns basically to Solo. He says Solo stepped up. And he says, "You got to tell you. There was a little concern when they got Solo, but he's in the ring with the best of all time. And sometimes when you're thrown into the deep end, you either sink or swim. And literally, Solo swims like a shark. And if there's ever a problem, he eliminates it. Look at the real problem." And then basically Solo kind of like just kind of whispers, Sami and Kevin. And he's basically telling him, Sami and Kevin. Roman tells Solo and KO, Sami, don't react to the crowd. They are not the problem. Literally, Sami and Kevin are not the problem. But there is a problem. And it ain't Sami and Kevin. The problem are your brothers. This is where shit gets real. Roman just walks around the Usos having this kind of like pissed off look in their face. Not really a pissed off look, but like, he knows some shit's going to go down when Roman's like literally looking directly at you and walking around both of the Usos. So what fucking happens is he walks around the Usos And he asked them, what y'all think was going to happen? They thought that they lost at WrestleMania and we ain't going to talk about it. Y'all thought you begged for a rematch and you dedicate it to me and then you lose? Why are you dedicating a tag team victory to me? I'm not even a tag team wrestler. I am literally the greatest singles wrestler of all time. We literally have Hall of Fame tag teams in this family. You disrespect the Bloodline and you dedicate it to him. He tries to take time out, but you come out here and you embarrass him. You misrepresent the Bloodline and the family. He knows better than this. And he asks the Usos to apologize. And literally one of the Usos look at one another and they're like, what are you looking at him for? Apologize. And what happens is Jimmy Uso is kind of like laughing his ass off for some reason. And Roman gets pissed off. He says, what are you looking at him for? Apologize. I don't even want to hear nothing out of his mouth rather than I'm sorry or I apologize, my tribal chief. Roman then asks Jimmy if he is laughing. And if he wouldn't, if he says, if I was you, I wouldn't listen to all these idiots. And what happens is he kind of pushes Jimmy around and Roman says that we run a commercial now. He's a clown now. And he basically shoves the face of Jimmy Uso. And after that, what happens is he shoves in the face of Jimmy Uso. Roman asks if he's going to do something. And Jimmy kind of has that pissed off look in his face. We all know Jimmy, even throughout this whole story of the Bloodline. Jay was always the hot one. And Jimmy was kind of like the laid back type of cat. But he was always a laid back type of dude. But like whenever like, Jimmy, takes action, this motherfucker takes action. That's what we basically saw at the Royal Rumble. Jimmy gets pissed. And what happens is he looks like he's about to like go after Roman. But then Jay defends Jimmy and he immediately tells Roman, we apologize, Zeus, all right? If you give us one more shot, they'll bring back the championships to the Bloodline. And Roman says, he is right. The tag team titles will come back to the Bloodline. And he tells Wise Man, fill him in. Paul Heyman gets the microphone. It says, ladies and gentlemen, the tribal chief has shown tonight with a game plan at hand. He authorized him to pull every string to flex their Bloodline muscle with the board of directors. The undisputed tag titles will come home to the Bloodline at Night of Champions, when Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn will lose the tag team championships to Solo Sikoa and your tribal chief, Roman Reigns. Roman then gets the microphone and says, at Night of Champions, Solo and him represent and hold it down. He dedicates that victory to the greatest tag team of all time. And he doesn't say the Usos. He says the greatest tag team of all time, Alpha and Sika, the Wild Samoans. And the segment ends. Wow. Now, I believe the announcement of Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa versus the Usos versus Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at Night of Champions, I believe that was leaked before the show even happened. And a lot of people were very confused, not only because of the fact that you have Roman and Solo wrestling Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn, but this match is happening in Saudi Arabia, and we all know Sami Zayn is of Syrian descent. But I believe there was like some law that happened where now like he's not really banned from the country or something like that. So that's not bad. I mean, that's clearly the reason why. I got to look more deeper into that. But it looks like Sami Zayn is going to be wrestling in Saudi Arabia, and the match is definitely happening. But this is very interesting. I know a lot of people were complaining, and really, if you think about it, on paper, this seems like a very stupid idea. But I'm going to go out on a limb and say let it play out because of the fact that, again, this is all playing into the story. Do I think Roman and Solo are going to win the tag team championships? Honestly, I do not think that is going to be the case. I think it's going to be a scenario in which you have the Usos either purposely causing Roman Reigns and Solo the tag team championships or by accident causing Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa the tag team championships. Could this be a scenario of Solo Sikoa basically getting a loss? Because we all know Roman Reigns is not going to get fucking pinned. There's no fucking chance in hell, no pun intended. But it's very interesting. Again, the plans are, the seeds are starting to get planted, and shit's getting very, very, very interesting. A lot of people say it's only the Usos, but I feel like it's only Jay. Jay is the catalyst to all this bullshit going on. And honestly, we're just going to have to see what the hell happens, man. But it looks like it's going to be official. It's going to be Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa taking on Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn in, I believe, 2 weeks at Night of Champions. After that, we got a Damage Control backstage interview. Basically, Bayley talks about how Roman and Bayley have a lot of things in common. They are Grand Slam champions and leaders and expect things to happen at Backlash. And like Roman, sometimes leaders take action. And she looks at Io Sky. Dakota and her will win back the tag team championships, and she tells Kayla that SmackDown belongs to Damage Control. After that, we get the Usos backstage. They run into the LWO, and what happens is they get so pissed off at the LWO, but then what happens is Santos and Rey comes in, and Santos says that it's not their fault that their tribal jefe don't love you no more. So, yeah, and then it looks like we're going to be getting a match between Santos Escobar and Rey Mysterio taking on the Usos next week on SmackDown. After that, we got Raquel Rodriguez and Liv Morgan versus Bayley and Dakota Kai. Honestly, at this point, after the Roman segment, really, nothing really important happened on this show, to be quite honest with you. I was not really expecting a lot, to be honest. I mean, this show kind of went off the cliff, and really nothing important happened until Bobby Lashley versus AJ Styles happened. But quick notes on the match. This was for the Women's Tag Team Championships. Raquel sends Dakota into the corner, but then Liv makes the tag. We get a hip attack by Liv into the corner. We then get a double team by Liv and Raquel. We get a cover by Liv and a near fall. We get an overhead kick by Dakota, but then Dakota goes for a roll-up. We then get a right hand by Dakota, and then we get a double team by Liv, but then Liv goes for the boot. Liv then ends up going for a roll-up on Bayley, but then we get a near fall. Bayley then goes for the clothesline, but then we get a cover by Bayley and a near fall. Once we're back from commercial break, Raquel goes for repeated clotheslines. Raquel then manages to hit the fall-away slam, but then she picks up Dakota and hits another fall-away slam. Then we get a double choke slam by Raquel, but then Liv gets sent into the corner and knocks out the heels. Then what happens is Raquel uses Liv as a weapon, and she drops Liv on both Dakota and Dakota and Io, but Dakota and Bayley. Dakota goes for the boot, but then Dakota gets sent to the outside. We get a knee by Liv, but then Dakota goes for the blind tag. After that, Bayley and Liv fight it out on the top. Bayley then picks up Liv Morgan, but then Dakota then drops down Liv onto the mat. We get a cover into near fall. At this point, Io Shirai has the belts, but then Raquel holds on to them, and then we get a roll-up by Liv, and the babyfaces retain the titles. So it looks like there's going to be a lot of tension within Io, Scott, and Bayley, and a lot of inner tension within Damage Control. I've always stated this, man. I said this in the Backlash review, man. You know, Damage Control, in my opinion, is definitely a failed experiment. You know, they tried everything that they could with Damage Control, and honestly, it didn't work out, in my opinion. It just didn't work out, and I feel like they need to start splitting Io, Sky from Bayley and Dakota, because I think Io can definitely do a lot on her own, and I think she can definitely have a great singles run on the main roster. After that, we get the Brawling Brutes backstage. Pretty Deadly come in, and basically they kind of mock both Rich Holland and Butch. And what happens is basically they get pissed, but they leave. After that, we get a Bianca Belair segment in her hometown. They literally got balloons, everything. They took out the red carpet and placed it on the ring mat. What happens immediately is Asuka comes out, and she offers a handshake, but then what happens is she spits in the face using her mist on the face of Bianca Belair. Now, could you consider this an Asuka heel turn? I have absolutely no freaking idea. I mean, first off, why are we... Again, this is what I don't like with the draft. Why, like, you have, the draft is supposed to give you fresh matches, right? After the draft, you're supposed to get fresh new feuds. Why are we still having Asuka still feud with Bianca Belair, like, after you drafted them both to the same brand? Another issue that I have is, why is Bianca Belair still holding the Raw Women's Championship while she is on SmackDown? Meanwhile, you have Rhea Ripley, who is the current SmackDown Women's Champion, holding on to the SmackDown Women's title on the Raw brand. These are the problems that WWE always sets themselves up for. Like, they always put themselves in these problems that they don't even know what to do with it, and that's what pisses me off. And at this point, the brand split kind of like just feels irrelevant. It's still irrelevant at this point. There's no really point of the draft, in my opinion. But, yeah, after that, we got our main event. We got Bobby Lashley versus AJ Styles in the semifinals of the SmackDown portion of the World Heavyweight Championship Tournament. Overall thoughts on this match. This was a pretty good match overall. I talked about this earlier in the show, but I would have personally much rather had Sheamus versus AJ Styles in the semifinals because I think it would have been a much better match. But I don't have a problem with Bobby Lashley versus AJ Styles because we already know who's going to win anyway. But let's get through with the match. AJ Styles is in control. He runs into a back elbow by Bobby Lashley, but then Lashley goes for repeated right hands. He sends AJ into the corner, but then AJ rolls through. AJ then applies the calf crusher, but then Lashley drives the head of AJ down to the mat. AJ then goes for repeated kicks to the back of the knee of Lashley. AJ then hits the DDT, but then we get the cover and a near fall. Lashley again is busted wide open. AJ picks up Lashley, but then Lashley escapes. Lashley then face plants AJ to the mat, but then we get a cover and a near fall. Lashley then gets AJ up with the gut wrench, but then AJ lands on his feet. AJ then manages to go for the sliding forearm on Bobby Lashley, but then Lashley is in the corner. Lashley then applies the hurt lock, but then AJ goes to the second rope. At this point, both men are on the apron, but then Lashley takes AJ and bumps him to the steel steps. He then picks up AJ, but then AJ escapes and sends him headfirst to the ring post. After that, AJ goes for the enziguri, but then he takes Lashley back into the ring. AJ misses the phenomenal forearm, but then Lashley picks him up. AJ escapes. Lashley goes for a roll through, but then he picks up AJ. AJ once again escapes, but then we get a right hand by AJ. Lashley then tries to go for the running power slam, but then what happens is we get a cover into near fall. AJ then goes for the back elbow, but then we get a right hand by Lashley, but then Lashley runs into the post after a spear attempt. We then get a knee by AJ onto the head of Lashley onto the post. AJ then ends up going for the phenomenal forearm, and then we get a cover by AJ, and AJ gets the win. And now AJ Styles will be facing Seth Rollins at Night of Champions. Overall thoughts on this finals. That was a great match by AJ and Bobby Lashley. And again, it was pretty predictable the way that AJ won. It was clearly obvious ever since he won the triple threat, and I'd stated this like twice already. It was pretty obvious that AJ was going to get the win. And honestly, the idea of having AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins in the finals of the World Title Tournament at Night of Champions is definitely the right decision to go. If you guys haven't seen their match at Money in the Bank back in 2019, these guys delivered a fucking banger, man. Like, these guys delivered an absolute classic, and I see them definitely delivering no different. They're definitely going to tear the house down in Saudi Arabia. I think at this point, it's clear that AJ is not going to win the World Heavyweight Championship because, number one, AJ is a SmackDown guy and he's not a Raw guy. And not only that, I feel like this belt is tailor-made for Seth Rollins because before this title was even introduced, there was really no direction regarding Seth Rollins whatsoever. And I feel like right now, you know, with him holding the World Heavyweight Championship, even though it's definitely seen as a consolation prize, and let's be honest, it is, because let's be real here, the only reason why these titles exist is because of the fact that Roman is barely on television for most weeks. Honestly, you know, I think Seth Rollins is, if he wins, which most likely he will, he's definitely going to have a great run with it, and he's going to have a lengthy title reign with it. But it all depends on what they're going to be doing with Seth Rollins at the end of the day. But overall, I think this match happening at Night of Champions is definitely the right decision to go, and these guys are going to be delivering an absolute banger of a match. But yeah, that was my SmackDown review from May 12th, 2023. Overall thoughts on this show. I thought the show was not bad. I mean, the first hour was definitely much more important. After the second hour, again, right after the Roman segment, really nothing really special happened all the way until we had Bobby Lashley and AJ Styles. And by then, you already knew who was going to win anyway. But nonetheless, it wasn't really that bad of a show, to be quite honest with you, but nothing really special coming out of this show. But yeah, man, things are getting very interesting as we head towards the Night of Champions, and a lot of developments happening in the realm of World Wrestling Entertainment. So yeah, man, that was my SmackDown review from May 12th, 2023. Please like, subscribe, comment down below. Push that bell for notifications and be on the lookout for more videos right here on the WrestleHavoc Podcast, in which we discuss everything in and outside of the squared circle. Make sure to like and subscribe for more content. And as the freaking referee would say, ring, ring, ring that damn bell for more notifications. And as always, it is Flamin' Ricky DeRays, signing out. I'll see you guys later.